They cuffed me in my own driveway on the kind of golden Saturday that makes you believe in second chances. The charcoal was still popping, the burgers still hissing, the smell of mesquite and sweet barbecue sauce curling through the air like a promise. My 16-year-old daughter, Emily, stood on the porch with a metal spatula trembling in her hand, tears carving white tracks through the sunscreen on her cheeks. Half the cul-de-sac had cracked their blinds or stepped onto porches, phones already recording. Two men in razor-sharp uniforms, badges catching sunlight like knives, yanked my arms behind my back and started reading me my rights in voices practiced for courtrooms. Thomas Harrigan, you are under arrest for criminal destruction of community property, non-payment of fines in excess of $4,000, and conduct unbecoming a resident of Magnolia Gates. The taller one smelled like cheap cologne and authority he didn't earn. The shorter one clicked plastic cuffs that bit into my wrists like cheap toys. My F-150 sat 10 feet away, still warm from the drive home after a 12-hour shift chasing an armed robbery crew through pine forests. I let them push me against the hood of what looked, to any civilian, like a legitimate county cruiser. I didn't fight. I didn't speak. I counted heartbeats and waited for the moment I'd been rehearsing in my head for 6 straight months. Because I've worn the real badge for 14 years. I'm Chief Tom Harrigan, and the only thing sweeter than revenge is watching the devil realize the trap was built with her own lumber. Let me take you back to the day this war started, because every good Southern story needs a proper funeral before the resurrection. Laura died on a Tuesday in March, the dogwoods just starting to bloom outside the hospice window. 18 months of chemo, radiation, and prayers that went unanswered. She spent her last lucid afternoon circling houses in a real estate magazine with a pink highlighter, whispering about a neighborhood where the streets curved like smiles and the mailboxes all matched. Get Emily there, Tom, she said, voice thin as tissue. Let her finish growing up where the world feels safe. I promised her I would. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers on 412 Oak Haven Lane using every dime of her life insurance money. The down payment was 23 years of marriage reduced to a cashier's check. We moved in on a Friday. By Monday, the first violation notice was taped to the front door like a ransom note. Grass height violation, 0.3 inches in excess of covenant maximum. I measured with a ruler. They weren't wrong, but only if you counted the blades bent by the moving truck's tires. Tuesday brought 2 more. Garbage cans visible for 7 minutes past pickup. House numbers painted charcoal instead of midnight onyx. Wednesday, the mailbox itself was wrong. Wrong font, wrong finish, wrong everything. I started timing the garbage cans with my department stopwatch. For minutes, 32 seconds. I laughed until I didn't. That's when I met Victoria Langford Ellington in the flesh. Picture a woman who could make a tax auditor flinch. 54, silver hair twisted into a bun so tight it pulled the corners of her mouth into a permanent half-smirk. Eyes the color of river stones, always calculating. She drove a white Mercedes GLS with vanity plates that read standards and patrolled the streets like a great white in Chanel. Rumor was she'd already forced 2 families into foreclosure over fabricated infractions, bought their houses at sheriff's sale, and flipped them for 6-figure profits. People didn't cross Victoria. They paid, or they vanished. The first HOA meeting was held in the clubhouse that smelled like lemon polish and fear. I showed up in my off-duty jeans and department polo, still smelling like gun oil from qualifying that morning. Victoria stood at the podium in a navy suit sharp enough to shave with. Mr. Harrigan, she said, voice smooth as bourbon over broken glass. Perhaps you're unfamiliar with our standards. This isn't some backroad trailer park where residents perform automotive maintenance in public view. 24 neighbors suddenly found their shoes fascinating. I smiled the way you do when you're already planning the autopsy. Mrs. Elena Alvarez, 78 years young, widow, Rose Gardner, caught me in the parking lot afterward. Chief, she whispered, clutching my sleeve, she's done this before. My late husband planted those roses the week we moved in 40 years ago. Now she wants $2,000 to rip them out for unauthorized landscaping. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steel. I promised her I'd look into it. That night, I started a file. Week 2 brought daily gifts from the compliance fairy. $200 because I changed my own oil, apparently that made my driveway a commercial zone. $300 because the porch light was 60 watts instead of the mandated 40. $500 because I coiled the garden hose clockwise. I'm not making this up. I kept every pastel notice in a manila folder labeled Ellington, E. By the end of the month, the stack was thick enough to stop a .45. Then she rolled out the golf carts. Not the leisurely kind old men used to chase birdies. These were black, lifted, fitted with amber strobes and magnetic signs that read Magnolia Gates Compliance Unit. Uniformed riders, 2 to a cart, cruised at dawn with clipboards and telephoto lenses, photographing mailboxes, lawn ornaments, the angle of American flags. One morning, I watched from behind my kitchen blinds as they documented Mrs. Alvarez on her knees pruning roses, then slapped a $2,000 fine on her door before breakfast. My detective instincts, honed by 20 years of hunting murderers, kicked into overdrive. I ran the numbers. Every violation carried a $75 processing fee. State statute capped administrative costs at $25. Across 200 homes, hundreds of bogus tickets. That was felony theft wearing a smile. I fired up the department laptop after midnight and cross-referenced covenants, corporate filings, bank records. What I found turned my stomach. Victoria had never held a legal election. Her entire board was a puppet show. 60% of the rules she enforced existed only in a Word document on her MacBook. The emergency assessments for pool repairs and gate upgrades, wired to accounts in Delaware, Nevada, and South Carolina, all controlled by Shell LLCs with her fingerprints all over them. This wasn't an HOA. It was organized crime in pastel polo shirts. Emily caught me at 2 a.m. one Saturday, surrounded by printouts and cold coffee. We were supposed to be rebuilding the carburetor on Laura's 1965 Mustang. The one place grief still felt productive. Grease streaked her cheeks like war paint. Dad, why don't you just arrest her? Can't use the badge for personal fights, sweetheart. She tilted her head exactly like Laura used to. What if it isn't personal? What if it's a crime? I stared at my 16-year-old genius and felt the first real spark of hope since the funeral. Monday, I launched the counteroffensive. I filed complaints with the State Attorney General, the Department of Revenue, the Secretary of State. I subpoenaed bank records through channels that don't leave fingerprints. I installed game cameras on my own property, the kind we use for poacher stings, motion-activated, 4K, night vision. Within 48 hours, I had crystal footage of Victoria's goons peering through backyard fences at 5:47 a.m., trespassing, stalking, manufacturing violations like assembly line widgets. Mrs. Alvarez showed up at my door again, this time with a banker's box and a glint in her eye that would terrify mob bosses. Tom, I prosecuted white-collar crime for the Justice Department before Nixon resigned. I've been building a file since she fined me for watering on odd-numbered days. She opened the box. Inside, forged signatures, wire transfer receipts, property deeds with doctored dates. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. We build a team that would make any task force proud. Detective Sergeant Mike Brennan brought thermal drones and a personal vendetta. His own mother had lost a condo to an HOA scam in Florida. Hank Reynolds, 2 doors down, Green Beret retired, mapped patrol patterns on a whiteboard like it was Key Sand. The Dawsons, young couple with a toddler who got fined $800 for sidewalk chalk art, handled encrypted group chats and live stream coordination. My garage became mission control. Laura's crescent wrenches hanging beside evidence boards, the smell of motor oil mixing with printer toner and burnt coffee. Victoria smelled the rebellion. She tripled fines, started photographing us through windows with telephoto lenses, sent anonymous letters threatening child protective services if we didn't comply. When that didn't work, she escalated to vandalism. Sprinkler heads smashed at 3 a.m., trash dumped across driveways, Hank's flagpole cut down with a reciprocating saw. Each act followed by a fresh violation notice before sunrise. She was writing her own indictment, one felony at a time. Her masterpiece of stupidity was the emergency special assessment. $2,500 per household, payable in 30 days or lien and foreclosure. No bids, no contractors, no explanation. Just a glossy letter on HOA letterhead that might as well have said, pay or lose everything. She scheduled my personal compliance hearing for a Saturday, a public shaming in the clubhouse where her handpicked board would play judge and jury. We let her schedule it. Behind the scenes, we were surgical. Mrs. Alvarez's old DOJ contacts opened doors at the FBI white-collar division. Forensic accountants traced $218,000 in embezzled funds through 7 shell companies. Handwriting experts matched forged signatures on loan documents. Game cameras caught her compliance officers committing burglary, trespassing, wire fraud, mail fraud, impersonating law enforcement. Every dawn patrol added another decade to her eventual sentence. Emily discovered the smoking gun while sorting violation notices under the garage fluorescents. Dad, look, these rule numbers don't exist in the actual covenants. 62% fabricated. The girl who couldn't parallel park yet had just dismantled a criminal empire with a highlighter. Victoria's final gambit was pure sociopath theater. She hired professional actors, real ones from Atlanta, equipped them with uniforms tailored to match county specs, badges ordered from a prop house in California, and a script that would make community college drama majors blush. They were to arrest me in front of Emily on barbecue day for official misconduct and community safety violations, drag me away in a rented Crown Vic with magnetic police decals, live stream the humiliation to break the resistance once and for all. We turned her stage into a federal sting. FBI agent Carla Ramirez coordinated from an unmarked van 3 streets over. Real deputies melted into hedges wearing gill suits borrowed from SWAT. Mrs. Alvarez set up a 4K live stream from her attic window. Hank rigged motion sensors that triggered every Ring camera on the block. The Dawsons ran drone overwatch. Mike Brennan chambered beanbag rounds and grinned like a kid on Christmas. Emily and I flipped burgers like any Saturday. I wore an old department t-shirt and jeans, apron that said kiss the cook. The smell of onions caramelizing on the grill mixed with coconut sunscreen and anticipation. At 2:17 p.m., the fake cruiser rolled up, lights flashing silent. 2 actors stepped out, posture perfect, voices booming. Thomas Harrigan, step away from the residence. You are under arrest. Emily dropped the spatula. Dad. I raised my hand slow, eyes on the taller actor's name tape, Sergeant Miller, embroidered wrong. There's been a mistake, officers. I'm just cooking with my daughter. No mistake. Cuffs. Plastic bit my wrists. Neighbors emerged, phones up. Mrs. Alvarez's live stream counter hit 2,000 viewers in 30 seconds. I gave the signal, 2 fingers to my left ear like swatting a mosquito. Mike Brennan rose from behind the Dawson's SUV like Judgment Day. Police. Hands in the air. For more officers materialized, shotguns leveled. Agent Ramirez strode down the center line in a Navy windbreaker, FBI in gold letters across the chest. And then Victoria's white Mercedes screamed around the corner, braking so hard the tires smoked. She expected cheers. She got handcuffs. Victoria Langford Ellington, Ramirez announced, voice carrying to every porch. You are under federal arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, racketeering, impersonation of law enforcement, forgery, stalking, trespassing, and enough RICO predicates to keep you in prison until your grandchildren retire. I flipped open my real badge. The plastic cuffs snapped under Mike's knife. Victoria's face cycled through shock, calculation, panic, and finally the pale realization that the game was over. This is a mistake, she stammered. I have authority here. Mrs. Alvarez called from her porch, voice ringing like a closing argument. You never filed board elections with the state. Your authority expired before my roses bloomed. The block erupted. Someone popped champagne. A kid set off fireworks left over from the 4th. News helicopters thumped overhead within minutes. Federal agents executed simultaneous warrants at Victoria's mansion, her lake house, her condo in Asheville. They found $187,000 in cash in a floor safe, boxes of replica badges, a 3D printer for forging documents, and a ledger titled Acquisitions with 12 addresses crossed off in red ink, 12 families who'd lost everything. Victoria drew 8 years in FMC Carswell, lifetime ban from any board or fiduciary position, $340,000 in restitution. All fraudulent liens dissolved like sugar in rain. The 12 families got their homes back with clear titles and apology letters from the U.S. Attorney. Mrs. Alvarez was elected president by acclamation, turned the clubhouse into a community center with actual potlucks and 0 fines for flag size. We finished Laura's Mustang the following spring, cherry red paint gleaming under magnolia blossoms. Every Saturday the driveway fills with folding chairs, cold sweet tea, and neighbors who bring their own classic cars to tinker alongside Emily. The garage walls still hold Laura's tools, but now they share space with a plaque from the governor citing extraordinary community service in the face of criminal corruption. Some nights I still smell mesquite and hear those plastic cuffs click shut, but the memory doesn't burn anymore. It reminds me that evil often wears khakis and a clipboard, and that ordinary people, when they refuse to blink, can bring it to its knees. So here's my question to you, straight up. When someone hides behind rules to bully, steal, and destroy innocent lives, where do you draw the line? Is there ever a moment where you fight fire with fire, even if it means bending a few regulations to save a lot of families? Have you ever faced a tyrant who thought paperwork made them God? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me if you'd have played it cool like I did, or if you'd have snapped those plastic cuffs and thrown the first punch. I read every word, and sometimes the comment section becomes the next battlefield. Let's hear your stand.